Hi, I'm Father Jason from St. Patrick's Episcopal Church, and this year for our Advent read-along, we're doing the Gospel of Matthew. That's because we're going into year A of the 3-year lectionary cycle, when most of the Sunday readings will come from the Gospel of Matthew. So today, I just want to do a little kind of overview of the book and talk about chapter 1. There's some things that you can look for when you're reading Matthew. First, it's arranged in 5 discourses of Jesus' teaching. Matthew is more concerned with Jesus' teaching than any of the other Gospels. And these 5 discourses are kind of a nod, a wink, and a literary wink and nod to the 5 books of the Torah, the books of Moses from Hebrew tradition. And along those lines also, keep an eye out for the parallels between the way Matthew describes Jesus and the way Moses is described in the Torah. So we can look for some parallels between Moses and Jesus as we read along. And remember last year we did a read along of the Gospel of Luke. So it's good to compare what we read in Matthew with what we read in Luke. So I will link to the playlist of the Luke videos from last year in the information about in the show notes of this video. With those things in mind, let's take a look at chapter 1, okay? It starts with the genealogy, Jesus' genealogy. And admittedly, a genealogy is not the most exciting way to start a drama. You can't imagine like some new hospital drama coming out on Netflix and the opening scenes are a genealogy of how the main character relates back to their ancestors. It's just, it isn't the way we start a drama in our modern era. But this one has some interesting features because of the women that are mentioned in the genealogy. Now, it's not just the fact that they are women, it is the particularity of who these women were. It's in verse 3, we get, in Judah, the father of Perez, and Zerah by Tamar. Tamar was the victim of domestic violence and rape. And it's interesting that she is included in this genealogy because that was very much looked down upon. Yes, we look down upon it, rape and domestic violence now, but in that day and age, it definitely wasn't seen as the man's fault. It was seen as the woman's fault. So to lift her up into this honorary role, this honorific role of being included in Jesus' genealogy is important and significant. Also later on, we get Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab. Rahab was the prostitute that helped the spies that Joshua sent into Jericho. And so she was a prostitute who aided and embedded the enemies of her city to help the enemies take over her city. Also interesting that this person of interesting profession is included in Jesus's genealogy. Then we get Ruth, who was the father, Boaz, the father of Obed by Ruth. And Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of King David. So Ruth being included, Ruth's a Moabite. She's a Gentile. She is not an Israelite. And so we've got outsiders, we've got prostitutes, we've got victims of domestic violence and rape. And then later on, we got, and David was the father of Solomon, the wife of Uriah. By the wife of Uriah. David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah. That's Bathsheba. So Solomon was the product of an affair. And including her in this genealogy is interesting, right? We're getting some people with less than stellar moral credibility, if you will. You know, David and these other men. We're getting people in here who you would not expect in a list of luminaries that preceded Jesus in his heritage. And so it could be that these women are listed, and these particular women are listed in order to give credence to Mary's own marital dilemma, which is the last half of the chapter. But I also think we need to keep in mind and look for the theme of how women and outsiders and outcasts and Gentiles are treated throughout the book. This is a clue to us that Jesus, right here in chapter 1, that Jesus is going to have a particular relationship with outsiders, outcasts, women, and the poor. So we should take a look at that as we keep an eye on that as we're reading. As I just mentioned, the second half of the chapter is dealing with the marital situation of Mary, but interestingly, we get Joseph this time. In the Gospel of Luke, like we read last year, Mary is visited by an angel. This time we have a visitation to Joseph by an angel. And so a little different twist there and some things worth teasing out. So again, going forward, keep an eye out for parallels between Jesus and Moses. Look for these 5 discourses that are kind of nods to the Torah and to the 5 books of Moses. Also, keep an eye out for ways that Matthew parallels or contrasts from the book of Luke that we read last year. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to the first chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Be sure to read 1 chapter a day, and we'll all get finished on December the 24th. Also, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit that bell so you're notified when we put out a video, be it one of our educational videos or one of the live streams of our worship here at St. Patrick's. Also, I'm excited, later on as we move through the book, we're going to be having some guests, some folks from St. Patrick's and some friends of mine from around the country are going to help us reflect on the chapters as we go through as well. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up later this month. I hope you have a blessed and wonderful day. And remember, God loves you more than you can possibly imagine.